Hi, and welcome to another edition of Newsmakers. I'm Jerry Roberts. It is Friday, June 17th. I regret to say that Jade Martinez-Pogue, who was supposed to join us, is not going to be here. She's following a vegetation fire in Slow, which is of great interest to us, of course. Meanwhile, we have our two all-stars, Josh Molina from Newshawk and his podcast, Santa Barbara Talks. I was going to say Santa Barbara Listens, but you don't do any listening on that show. And Nick Welsh, award-winning columnist and executive editor of the Santa Barbara Independent. Okay, lots of stuff to talk about. The school board, the Santa Barbara Unified School Board had this issue again before them on universal access, which I guess is no longer called leveling up. Which is an equity matter, but it still seems pretty controversial, Josh.
Yeah, so the school board, well, they actually didn't vote because this was handled administratively by the superintendent, but they did hear a presentation and they did have lots of conversation about combining honors classes and college prep. So honors is when you're above grade level, college prep is when you're at grade level. And this has been an equity measure because the kids who typically sign up for honors are the ones who, of course, should be in honors classes, but also the ones whose parents perhaps are pushing them to sign up for it. Maybe the counselors have reached out to them and encouraged them to be on that track. However, there are kids who should be in honors who for whatever reason don't sign up for it. And there's this effort to say, let's stop this artificial line. Let's put everyone in the same classroom and let the teachers decide who gets an honors curriculum, who gets a college prep curriculum, because there's systematic barriers.
There's a big racial difference between those two groups of categories, correct?
Yeah, the percentage of students who are taking advanced classes in high school is about 51% of Latinos and about 89% of Asians and whites. So the thinking is we've got to sort of close that gap, achievement gap. They call it the opportunity gap now. But whites have higher test scores. They take higher advanced courses. And the idea, or the issue is that this is a systematic problem. They say there should be more. The number of kids in honors classes should reflect the population of the district. The other side of it, however, though, is there are many parents who believe that their students who are in these advanced courses, these honors courses, are somehow going to be impacted academically because there are students on the other side who those teachers are going to have to devote time and resources to, and their kids are not going to face the rigorous academic curriculum that they want. So that's sort of a euphemism for people saying that, wait a minute, my smart kid is going to be dragged down by these other kids. And so that's the debate. That's the conversation. There have been a lot of letters, calls, responses from parents. On Tuesday night, they stretched this thing out. They didn't even bring it up until like 8:45. It went past 10 p.m. There was only a couple of people in public comment, and it was pretty much kind of a done deal by the time they came around.
So Hilda Maldonado, the superintendent, just did this. The school board didn't have to vote?
No, the school board did not have to vote. It's an academic decision, administrative decision. The principals took the lead on this. They were supportive of this, and they had some teachers talk about how they believe this is the best way.
All the high school principals, all three high school principals were on it?
No, there were two. It was Santa Barbara High and Dos Pueblos who were at a seminar or a webinar to talk about this issue. Bill Woodard, the principal of Dos Pueblos, has been the most out front with this because it was piloted at DP, and he really sees it as a solution, as do some of the teachers. The board comments were really interesting. They acknowledged massive communication problems, saying this should have come to the board last year. Instead, it was piloted on 2 campuses, and parents were freaking out. We don't know anything about this. And it wasn't until here we are, the last school board meeting, or the second to last school board meeting of the year, and they're talking about it. So Virginia Alvarez drove that point home. Your friend Laura Capps, Jerry, drove that point home, which I thought it was interesting that
You quoted
she's-
Laura Capps at length. Did you notice that, Nick? That he lifted his Laura Capps quote moratorium for this story.
well, it is a temporary moratorium. No, I quote people when they say something that's worth quoting, Jerry.
All right, let me just introduce a note of snark here. A lot of these parents who are complaining, I believe, if you did a Venn diagram, there would be an overlap with those who were complaining that Sean Carey was being run off by Hilda Maldonado, the assistant superintendent. But in fact, this is Sean Carey's baby. She was in charge of equity programs to a large extent, particularly in the high school. And so, you know, here we go. Let's blame Hilda for everything.
Jerry, that Venn diagram does not overlap in the ways that you say. The people who complain about Sean Carey are not the people complaining about Hilda Maldonado. They're two different
No,
factions.
I'm talking about complaining about leveling up, or as I like to call it, universal access.
Well, they did acknowledge that they should have rolled this out earlier and that they're going to try to do a better job of communicating on these kinds of issues. Laura Capps had said, if we need to do it 10, 11, 12 times, we need to do it, because she said there are really smart people out there who think we're getting rid of honors. And that was, you know, an interesting point.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where it's headed. I don't know what.
And this is going to start in the fall.
Yeah. Started.
I mean, the thing here is, you know, it's been a long time since I was in high school, but I piggybacked on off of smarter kids all the time. I learned more from you know, doing a brain dump with the smart kids than I did from my teachers, and I think that there's a lot of pedagogical research that shows that students learn more from students than they do from teachers, or as much. In fact, one of the best ways to bridge the achievement gap has to do with pairing students with each other. And I think this is an opportunity where you're going to be, you have students working with each other, and they're going to be learning from each other. And, you know, we've seen what the results are otherwise. It's just more stratification, more division, and more separation. I think it's good that they're making a shot at this, and we'll see.
Yeah.
You know,
Look how much smarter I am hanging out with you two all the
Oh,
time.
Look at it.
absolutely.
There's the proof
no
right there.
question about that. All right, just a last question.
And you've done all the reporting, and I just get to borrow from you.
All right, we'll get out of this anyway. Yeah, don't start talking about people borrowing people's reporting here, because yeah. But anyway, I might get canceled. Was there any public comment on the other side? In other words, the college prep parents being concerned that their kids would get less attention.
It's all, I mean, on social media, yes, the parents complain, they talk to journalists, but not at this meeting. They were not there. It was late. And I think they realized there's nothing we can do. There's no vote. It's an administrative decision. And they were only having the conversation because of so much pressure to talk about it in public. And I guess they decided 10 o'clock on a Tuesday night, midway through June, was the best time to have that public discussion.
9 o'clock on a Tuesday night after school is out.
Yeah.
You know, probably a pretty safe time to have the conversation.
Yeah, and whose fault is that? Is that the chair of the school board, or is it, let me guess, the superintendent? All right,
I don't know, Jerry, why don't you have her on the show for an hour and ask her about it?
I might. I'll put that in my questions for next time. And I gotta say, Nick, the only thing I ever learned from somebody in high school was how to open a beer bottle with my nose. So that's
Demonstration? No.
I'm not sure your theory flies. All right, let's talk about the only thing that matters, Nick, in Santa Barbara, beside bicycles, housing. A couple of issues. One, this 540 unit building out at UCSB, I guess has been approved. the go-ahead from the regents. And this is part of the long-range development plan, or as I like to call it, the LRDIP, world's worst acronym. So is this going to ease the, all the kids sleeping in their cars and motels and stuff like that?
Well, this is 540 units of housing that's being focused on faculty and staff. And I think the LRDIP, as you call it, back in 2010, I think, said the university is committing itself to building somewhere in the ballpark of 1,800 faculty and staff housing units by the year 2025. And I think they're somewhere in the ballpark of having built 75 with another 30 or so in the development pipeline.
How many they have to build?
1,800 is what they committed to. So they're way behind, and they're under a lot of pressure to get some show on the road. And this came as very good news in that regard. It's a very long, skinny piece of land that goes from the ocean to, was it Colegio?
It's on Ocean Drive.
On Ocean Drive, there's going to be a lot of eucalyptus trees that disappear, and we are hearing about the eucalyptus curtain. But it's a really big deal that it's gotten this far and that they're going to proceed. It's an unusual way. The faculty is, that's the faculty, the university is partnering with a private developer, I think called Greystone, and they're going to build it, and then Greystone is going to operate it. The issue is, to what extent will these units be affordable? And I know that Dick Flax, a UCSB sociology professor who's retired and very big on the housing issue, has expressed concern that the for sale units will be 20% below market, and the rental units will only be 10% below market. And given what the market is right now, that still may be considerably higher than a lot of faculty members can afford. And that issue, I am told, is there's going to be some gnawing on that bone between now and whenever the final dotting of the I's and crossing of T's take place.
All right, Josh, will this have any effect on City of Goleta's lawsuit against the university on the housing issue?
I don't know the answer to that, Jerry. Far be it for me to speculate.
Isn't it? But that's focused on student housing, is it not? I mean, I haven't worked at UCSB for a long time, but it was, the ceiling was always 20,000 students. Somewhere along the way, it's been lifted to 25,000. I must have missed a meeting or something, but I would think that's at the crux of the lawsuit, and a lot of the, the awful conditions for the students of living in their cars. And this is going to do nothing to relieve that, correct?
Not immediately, no.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, we'll hear more on the LRDIP, I'm sure, because it's long range. Oh, where has anybody heard about Dormzilla lately? Where does that stand?
Well, what they're doing is this is the famous Charlie Munger dorms that will house about 5,000 students and has a window deficit of some significance and has been much reviled by every architect who can sign his name or her name to the bottom of a plan. That one is, they're doing tours of, they have a simulated version of what the dorms look like. It's kind of like going, in those outer space movies where people live in outer space colonies. That has that effect. They're very nice.
That artificial intelligence.
Artificial intelligence, yeah.
So they're still trying to sell it. Henry, the chancellor, is still trying to sell the idea, because Munger says he'll pay for the whole thing if you build it without changing anything, right?
Well, I think they're hoping that Munger will pay for the whole thing, but they've got a long way to go before that happens. It'll be interesting to see what happens when Greg Hart goes to Sacramento, assuming he is elected in the fall to the assembly, I think that there is a sense that we need housing in the most desperate way, and we may be willing to, there may be a big compromise, and people who hate Dormzilla may be astonished to find that it's going to get the political support it may need.
Yeah. And of course, Henry Yang will be nowhere near it. So someone famously told me, Henry has his hands on everything and his fingerprints on nothing. So we'll see how that goes. And then elsewhere on the housing front, Josh, this housing authority a project at Cabrillo and Castillo got a kind of a go ahead yes this week.
Yeah, everyone seems to be in support of this housing project on the corner of Carrillo and Castillo. It's targeted toward the missing middle, which is people who make between 80 and 120% of the median income. And then another group, 120 to 160%. That's about $84,000 or so. So it's for people who don't qualify for traditional subsidized housing. And it's going right there on the corner. This was the site of the project where they originally had proposed tiny homes, and the neighborhood became unglued. And it was this very awful meeting at the Louise Lowry Davis Center where people were saying we love housing, but not this kind of housing and not in this neighborhood. So the housing authority, there were some other things, financing fell through. Anyway, they've come back with this proposal, which seems to be something that is more palatable to people. The biggest controversy is moving it away from Highway 101 and pushing it toward Castillo Street. There's going to be a whole bunch of those trees that are going to be removed, provides a nice canopy. They're going to replant
trees.
Was that?
Bad week for trees.
Yeah, but it's it's easy because the city owns the property.
Yeah.
Right. And they're partnering with the housing authority. So this project's going to happen. It's going to happen.
I may have missed it. How many units is it?
I think it's something like 70, 72, something like that.
Yeah. So it's a go. It's going to happen, right?
It's going to happen a lot easier than a private developer trying to push through their project because the city owns the land and they're partnering with the housing authority. The neighbors are pretty much on board, and it's just a matter of time before they do it.
Yeah. Nick, I'm sure you noticed that council member Megan Harmon wanted to float a trial balloon about using the tot tax, the hotel tax, for housing, and so went to Josh to put it out there to see how it flowed. Is that going to happen? Do you think they will raise the hotel tax and take it out of the hide of tourists?
It's sort of an irresistible idea. It's pain-free for people who live here, except if you are in the hotel industry, hotel motel industry, you may put up a squawk. I know the housing authority is interested in pushing something like that, and I think there may be certain advantages if it's pushed by outside entities as opposed to the city council itself. If the council does it, I think there's some restrictions on how the money is spent that wouldn't be there if it was put on the ballot by an outside entity. But that's sort of quibbling on the details. I think the big picture is it's been a long time since we've raised our bed taxes. We're not the highest in the neighborhood. We're not the highest in the South Coast. And it's hard to come up with a good reason why not.
But I believe it would have to go to the voters, though.
Oh,
right?
Of course,
voters
we have to.
Yeah.
But again, you're asking people who are not going to be impacted to say whether or not we should charge hotel visitors a couple extra bucks.
Yeah, but by then we'll be in the throes of a recession at least. So, Josh, given the experience with Measure B and how it was sold as not a lost leader for the city hall unions and then turned out to be, will the voters approve a tot tax or not? Yes or no?
Yes.
The correct answer is no. They will vote no on any tax that you put out there, given our condition. When would it be on the ballot? How soon could it be?
She's trying. Council member Megan Harmon has suggested something for 2024.
Okay, all right, yeah.
But the county of Santa Barbara has some tax that it's thinking about putting on. And so, they don't want to have too many taxes on at the same time, so there
Yeah,
may be.
what's a county tax?
You know what, I'm having a brain drain at this moment as to what it is, but I know that there's something.
I'll tell you what it's not, cannabis. Okay, moving along. So, Nick, we've seen the spectacle for the last few weeks of Representative Salud Carbajal running around giving those giant checks to people with a big smile on his fan while democracy collapses around him. But I don't complain. But you seem to feel that he's been doing yeoman's work and good work on a bipartisan gun safety bill, yes?
Jerry, I think that you have taken an overdose of grumpy pills, thinking you were reaching for your fentanyl. But just because Salud Carbajal default position is to grin, you're going all Ernie Solomon on him.
No. Well, go ahead. Let's talk about one thing.
And you did so at a time where, here's Salud Carbajal. He's been elected 3 times to Congress. He's going for his 4th. He's clearly going to win. And what has he done? And this week, he's got a piece of legislation he introduced into the House having to do with gun violence, which is at the top of the list of the package that the Senate is now considering. And this is a pathetically historic moment. It's pathetic because the measures being considered are so namby-pamby and weak tea, but it's historic because it's the first time in 30 years that we're thinking and talking seriously about anything. So Salud Carbajal, congressman, has a measure in there that would put some indeterminate amount of monies to the states to help them defray the costs of adopting what are called red flag laws. And the red flag law allows me to take guns away from you, Jerry, if I think you pose a danger to people and you've been acting or saying things that suggest you might go postal.
That's a good idea, for sure, with Jerry.
I got the daisy right here.
All right, we just got canceled. Okay.
Got the Red Rider.
All your guests can watch Santa Barbara Talks from now
and
on.
They did a study recently looking. California passed a bill like that in 2000, I want to say 14 or 15, immediately in the aftermath of the Elliot Rogers shooting out in Isla Vista, where 6 people were killed, 3 of whom were shot to death, 3 of whom were wounded, and then he killed stabbing and using cars as well. So he was very multidimensional in his mayhem.
Multi-platform, yeah.
They passed this bill, and this think tank up in the UC Davis that monitors gun violence and measures to curb it credits the bill with preventing 58 potential mass murders in the state of California. Now it's hard to, how do you measure the volume made by the dogs that doesn't bark? But these were individuals whose guns were seized, who had made indications of they were going to go do some serious damage.
Is it clear from your understanding of Salud's bill, states would not be required to do this, right?
Salud is being extremely careful. He said, I'm not making anybody do anything. I'm opening the door. I'm removing the obstacle. Really, I'm removing the excuse they could use that, oh, we can't do it because there's costs associated. So we're going to remove all the excuses they could possibly have so they don't have any other excuses left. That's kind of what his bill's about.
All right. Hey, Josh, so I'm sorry.
And that's why he's grinning.
Yeah, that's why he's grinning. If anything, the November election seems to be even more of a snooze than the primary was, except now we got at least one good race for Goleta City Council. What's going on with that?
Yeah, so Luz Reyes Martin, who is a member of the Goleta Union School Board, has decided to run against longtime incumbent Roger Aceves for the Goleta City Council seat. They have district elections now, And so she's going to challenge him for that seat. And this is a really big challenge to Roger. And I would say betting money says that Luz Reyes Martin is going to win this seat. And the reason she's going to win it is because she's backed by the Democratic Party. They're going to work really hard for her. I think in a citywide election, Roger would do much better, but there's a lot of unknowns now. Roger's really well liked among Goleta people, but now we've shrunk it down to a certain neighborhood, Mountain View neighborhood. She's a Mountain View parent. She's going to have lots of support, and the party's going to do everything it can. I think it's a little bit unfortunate, not endorsing one person or another, but Roger brings a good balance to the Goleta City Council. He is a registered Democrat, but he is a conservative Democrat. And he plays a role on that board that no one else plays. The other four are much more to the left. And if you get Luz in there, you're going to have more of a uniform board. So that's not to disparage Luz. I think she'd be great on the Goleta City Council. It's too bad they don't have 7 seats. It's too bad that there's not another seat that's open, because Roger is a Goleta guy, and he really is in touch with a lot of the needs of Goleta residents. He's not a Democratic Party guy, and we may see a scenario here where he loses because of that.
Will he run against the party? I mean, make that the issue. We've seen, that sort of be semi-successful in a couple of other races. I mean, yeah, God forbid there's any balance on it from the Democratic Party's perspective. We wouldn't want to do that. But
I think he'll run on that. This is a Goleta. It's a nonpartisan race, and we don't need to have national issues and national stances on positions start to sort of weigh in on local issues. He's a little more pro-business, a little bit more pro-business, a little bit more pro-housing and developer, and he is going to get criticized for some of his sort of positions in the past in terms of his alliances with the chamber. And Luz Reyes Martin is, she's a strong candidate. It's just too bad they both couldn't be on the board.
No, you make a good point there. I mean, if you don't have somebody representing the business point of view on the councils, and it all becomes one hand clapping, you definitely lose a key element of the mix that needs to be represented, and that would be a shame. Roger, back in the day, was a Santa Barbara city cop. He was one of the guys that you would call if you needed a hostage negotiator. That was sort of Roger's stock and trade. He would come in and do the negotiations, and he may find himself needing those skills in this race.
Yeah, well, Luz is not only going to get the party; she'll get the Sierra Club, and she'll get Planned Parenthood and everything. So that's 3 out of the 4 big ones. But what will the independent do, Nick?
We haven't even begun to think about it.
I tell you,
I would say,
doesn't it sound like he's for Roger already? I don't know.
The problem, Roger's drawback is, he tends to be the grumpy old man. And
what's your complaint about that?
Well, Jerry, he should definitely be your candidate. But the other thing is that when he ran for county supervisor against Janet Wolf many years ago, I don't know what he was thinking. He took tons of oil money. Tons is sort of a vague term, but it just seemed like if you're a South Coast politician, that's just one thing you stay away from. And Roger did not do that. And I have a hunch will come back to haunt him in this one.
All right. Okay. Real quick, is there any developments or fallout from the Formation Commission city administrator clash on the civilian review? Anything new going on there that you've heard? I had Barney on the show. Everyone will want to watch that interview, I'm sure. What's the latest? Yeah, in other words, it was in one of those compromises that nobody was entirely happy with, but does the Formation Commission folks led by Gabe Escobedo kind of say, well, it isn't bad yet, or they're still angry. You know?
I haven't heard much chatter in the past week other than, in the media sort of analyzing the situation. I think that Gabe wants to move on and focus on other things and not be the guy who's in a public war with the beloved police chief. And I think Barney's also a little bit obviously wanting to move on because there was a little bit of a attempt to sort of I don't want to say tarnish, but blemish sort of his intents. And so I think he wants to move on. I sort of feel like everybody wants to move on and put it behind them. I don't know of any other work that's being done here to change anything.
Yeah, and Barney said they've basically selected the police chief out of the three. They know who it is. They're dotting the I's and crossing the T's. So, Barney won't be around much longer.
Barney won't be around for that. Sean Hill may or may not be. Sean Hill is a lieutenant who is very much involved in this process and definitely has the respect, I think, and trust of many people on the Formation Commission. So, they have a whole ordinance they have to write. And it's sort of like, you've just given birth to the baby, now you got to raise it. And at least to the walking stage. And they have a lot of work to go. And so whatever bad blood existed and exists is definitely going to need to be resolved if they're going to really hash this one out in the ordinance committee.
Yeah, well, I liked your perspective on it, this week. This is not nothing. This is something, it's certainly a lot more than we've had. And let's just do this. And then, what's the cliche? Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Although I must say, I will put some money that if Gabe Escobedo wants to get appointed to another city commissioner, he's going to find some rough sledding, because I know the mayor was not very unhappy, and I believe that Councilman Jordan as well, and perhaps others. So that will be interesting to watch. And let's close. Nick, you did a send-off for a fellow that used to be the face of KEYT, who passed away this week.
Yeah, King Harris was a news producer, anchor. He was the guy at KYT from, I think, I want to say 1984 to 1997. And, he was the quintessential anchorman. I mean, he didn't look the slick part. His hair was always a little bit rumpled. His suits were not quite crisp enough. He was not a fast talker, but he knew everybody, and he really was sort of old school journalist, and had a lot of respect and a lot of affection. And he moved away a while back, so his name is sort of forgotten. He was a Vietnam vet, so he was very involved with Walter Kapp, UCSB professor, when he was doing his welcome home to the vets in the classroom teaching. And he was a 1950s, 1960s music trivia nut, and would go toe-to-toe with Jerry DeWitt, a former city council member who was an even bigger music trivia nut. And so there was a sense of liveliness and engagement that the community benefited from.
Yeah. All right. Well, may his memory be a blessing. All right. That's all we got.
And Jerry, I just want to say,
Yeah.
Jerry, growing up here, I can still hear King Harris's
Really?
voice on the 6 o'clock news. I mean, his voice was just perfect for broadcast. And if you grew up here, you remember him and you're like, oh man, how sad. But he was definitely not of like this current generation, but the generation before, a total legend. So yeah, good job, Nick, for knowledge.
Okay. All right. Thanks to Josh Molina. Thanks to Nick Welsh. Thank you all for watching. We have a word for Jade's stands out there, and we know there are many of them. We'll definitely try to have her back next week, but watch out for that vegetation fire and slow. All right. We'll see you next time on Newsmakers.
All right.